Growing up Italian, food is always a big part of family. Recipes are handed down from generation to generation. These recipes are precious and family secrets. If you're lucky enough to have a recipe shared with you, it's a big deal. Today I'm going to share with you a recipe that was handed down to me by my mother-in-law. This recipe was handed down to her by her mother, and not knowing the origin of this recipe could very well be 100 years old. I've been given permission to share this recipe with you. So today I'm going to share with you my mother-in-law's chicken cacciatore. So let's get started.
All right, so let's get started. First thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to do a little prep work. You're going to gather all your ingredients for this recipe, and you're going to start by chopping up some garlic. You're going to need about 4 or 5 cloves of fresh garlic, and you're going to want to dice it up real nice. Don't use any of that jarred garlic you find at the grocery store. Fresh garlic is better. You'll thank me for it. Plus, it's a good opportunity to practice those knife skills. All right, so once you get your garlic all chopped and diced, just put it in a bowl and lay it aside. Next thing you're going to need to prep is some onion. Now the recipe calls for 1 large red onion, but I couldn't find any large ones, so I got 2 small ones. And we're going to want to slice those up. See how I'm doing this here? Just slice them up. Nothing too big, nothing too thin, just perfectly sliced red onion. Once you're all done with that, put them in a bowl as well and lay them aside. Now, this recipe calls for prosciutto. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to the deli and you're going to ask them for a big chunk of prosciutto, about a ½ pound. Don't get sliced. Get it as thick as possible, because when you come home, I'm going to want you to cut it up into cubes. See what I'm doing here? You're going to want a sharp knife for this. Another trick is to put the prosciutto in the freezer just for a little while so it firms up, and that makes cutting it a little bit easier. Now, my knife wasn't as sharp as it could have been. I grabbed my knife sharpener and ran it through a few times, and that helped out quite a bit. And I just continued on cubing up the prosciutto. Once the prosciutto is all cubed up, you can put that in a bowl as well and lay it aside. Now we're going to move on to the chicken. This recipe calls for chicken thighs and or drumsticks. Now, I went with chicken thighs. They were priced right at the grocery store, and I like chicken thighs. I decided against the drumsticks, but you can use whatever you like. I also encourage you to use chicken thighs with the bone because it's going to add more flavor to the dish. Now, we're going to clean it up a little bit. Chicken thighs have a lot of skin, extra skin that just really isn't necessary. It's just going to create more oil, and it's not going to cook very well, and it's not very tasty in your mouth. It doesn't have a great texture, and it's not going to be crispy because it's going to be in the pot with the rest of the ingredients. Just trim it up, clean it up. Anything loose and flap, anything that's not necessary, just cut those off and remove them. Once you're done with that, just put everything aside. Once you're all done trimming up and cleaning up your chicken, it's time to season. You're going to want to generously season the chicken with salt and pepper and a little garlic powder. All right, so flip it over and do both sides. Salt and pepper, garlic powder. That's all you need to do. From here, you're going to need to get yourself some flour. We're going to dredge the chicken in the flour. You're going to want to season your flour. So again, salt, pepper, and garlic powder in your flour. Mix it up a little bit with your fingers. Take each chicken thigh and coat it with a little bit of flour, as I'm doing here. Once you're done coating your chicken in flour, just lay it aside, and let's move on to the next step. Now, using the aluminum foil for your flour makes cleanup that much easier. All you got to do from here is fold up the aluminum foil and toss it in the garbage. It's easy as that. All right, now we're going to move on to cooking the chicken. Get yourself a large roasting pan or a Dutch oven like I'm using here. You're going to add a little olive oil to the bottom and drop your chicken in there. You're not cooking the chicken all the way through at this point. You're just putting them in there long enough to develop a little color. About 3 minutes each side will be plenty. Look at that color right there. See that? That's what we're looking for. You don't want to overcrowd the pot either, so do this in batches. 6 pieces of chicken, I did 3 at a time. If you find that your pot is drying up from the oil, you can add more oil if you need to. Once your chicken's all colored, move it to the side and brown the rest of it. All right, now the chicken is all browned and crispy and looking really beautiful, and I can smell the flavors coming all over. Move the chicken aside on a plate, and we'll move on to the next step. Now, to the pot, we're going to drop in some red onion and some garlic. Don't cook it too long, just enough where it becomes fragrant and translucent, and just sweat them onions for a little bit. Right now, your kitchen is going to start filling up with all kinds of great smells. It's going to smell amazing in there. You're welcome. Okay, so now that your onions have sweat and your garlic is fragrant and the kitchen's full of all these wonderful smells. It's time to add half of that wine, that white wine that you have. Add half the white wine to the pot. That's going to deglaze the bottom of the pot. You're going to want to scrape off all the bits and pieces that are stuck into the pot. All right, and then from here, we're going to get a can of San Marzano tomatoes. We're going to open that and drop it right into the pot. Now, if you see anything in there like this green leaf, pull that out because that's not going to bring any flavor whatsoever. Pull that out and just toss that out. Add a little water to the can and add it to the pot. All right, now from here, we're going to bring everything back in. We're going to bring the chicken back in. We're going to put in some green olives. Now, when I bought this jar of green olives, I didn't realize it had other things in it. It turned out that it was an antipasto jar of green olives, but it also had garlic in there, some roasted red peppers, some pepperoncinis. It wasn't what I thought I was buying, but it turned out to be really good in the end. So I think I'm going to continue doing this in the future. So you can either follow the recipe the way it's written below in the description, or you can actually use my happy little mistake here because it's going to bring a lot of flavor. And again, you'll thank me for it. Let me know what you decided to do and how you liked it or didn't like it. You're also going to want to add a can of black olives to the pot. All right, give us a little, also a jar of capers, just half the jar though. You don't need the whole jar, just half the jar. And then all that cubed prosciutto, just toss it all in the pot. Give it a nice toss and bring it back to a boil. At this point, you're going to want to season it with some oregano, stir it up, and bring it back to a boil. Once you're boiling, you can put the lid back on, lower the heat, and simmer. Now, you're going to want to bring that chicken up to 165 degrees, but right before it's done, at this point, you're going to want to drop the mushrooms in there. That's the last thing you're going to drop into the pot is the mushrooms because they're going to cook the fastest. And the rest of that red wine. Drop it all back in there, give it a toss, coat everything up, put the lid back on, and put it back on the heat and let it continue to cook. This dish is suggested to be served with pasta. So I boiled up a box of pasta and I put it in a bowl, a big serving bowl. Once the whole chicken dish is completed, as you can see here, it's looking beautiful and brown and just, God, the smells, it's amazing. You're going to want to put that right here and you're going to scoop out the chicken and all those vegetables and just lay it on top of that pasta. Just make it pretty. You know, a little presentation goes a long way. When you lay this on the table, it's going to look amazing. Trust me. All right. So now that you've got it all in there, it's time to eat.
Isn't this beautiful? I am so excited to eat this. So what am I waiting for? Let's dig in. All right, let's take a piece of this chicken. Some of this pasta on the bottom. And all this good deliciousness right here like this. All right. Oh, it's so tender. Oh, look at that. That is so beautifully cooked. I want some of this. Some of this mushrooms. Some of this pasta. All right. First bite. Forget about it. Forget everything I showed you today. I'm going to keep this to myself. No, honestly, make this. It's good. It's really good. The prosciutto, the olives, and that green olive that had all the extra stuff in it. That was actually a pleasant surprise because it added a little something extra to this dish that I wasn't expecting, and it wasn't part of the recipe, but it was a happy accident. There's no rules when you're cooking. You can do whatever you want as long as it tastes good. And I discovered something. So I've altered this recipe by accident, and it turned out delicious. So good, so good, so good. Chicken Cacciatore. Go out and try it. I encourage you to try this recipe. And if you do, come on back and comment below and tell me how it came out. If you have any suggestions, comment below. If you like this video, if you learned anything, give me a thumbs up. Perhaps consider subscribing to my channel because that'll help me grow and all the good things from there will happen. This is Buck. This is my kitchen. This is Sable, my noisy dog. There's not really much here you can have, baby. Here, want a piece of pasta? Okay. All right. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.